Hello, this is the Green Report, a Rappler show on the environment and the stories of people whose decisions impact the world around us. I'm Iya Gozum.
And I'm G. Geronimo.
And today's guest is no other than human rights and environmental lawyer Tony La Viña, who just recently launched his memoir entitled Ransomed by Love, A Happy Change Maker's Unfinished Journey. Hi, sir. Thanks for making time to be with us.
No.
So, sir, let's start with the title of the book. The running theme is love. As you said, it's a book about the many love stories of your life. But why would you choose the verb ransom sa libro? What are you ransomed from exactly? What are you released from exactly?
In my case, I have been ransomed from my mental health illnesses, because I have several of that, my mental health challenges as an Asperger's person, what we call ASD, autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, and being bipolar. Ransom also because of my physical challenges as a cancer. I'm not gonna say survivor, but cancer afflicted, and right now, still surviving. Plus just your condition as a human being where you're so imperfect, so limited, so selfish even, and so self-centered.
Alright.
But love is the one that draws you out of yourself. Love is the one that makes you do things you're not capable of, you thought you're not capable of, right? So the love stories there are, love for the planet, love for this country, love for the Philippines,
Love for oneself.
love for the self, love for people, of course, especially for me, the poor and the excluded, those people whom I do not know, but I have to love. But of course, partners, friends, romantic partners, romantic friends, my wife, my kids, the people I mentor, because I've taught so many years. It's their love for me and my love for them that ransoms me from all these challenges.
So, sir, initially you started writing the book as a memoir, as a form of saying goodbye when you were diagnosed with cancer, right? How has the writing experience shifted when you, should I say, survived cancer?
Yeah, it's interesting because I did write that as both goodbye, kind of a long goodbye,
Yeah.
as well as not just a goodbye, but also a testament, right? This is what I'd like to leave behind. And defiance, actually. Okay, if you're gonna kill me, cancer, before you kill me, let me do this, right? Let me do this one last thing. And then I thought I was gonna die in 6 months. I wrote most of the book in 6 months. I started writing June, July 2023, finished more or less the first draft in December. Then I realized I was alive. Buhay pa ako, di ba? And I might have more time. So now the book doesn't become a goodbye anymore. And that's why the title is An Unfinished Life, right? But the book is a gift to the next generation that will keep on giving, a gift that keeps on giving. Because I'm still here to be interviewed by you. I'm still here to talk to people about the book, especially young people. This book was written for young people, for the next generation. Because what I realized when I was writing the book, is that everything that I care about, especially environment and climate justice, is intergenerational. It's not gonna be done. Ironically, I thought, wow, it's all right to die. Because even if I live another 6 months, another year, another 2 years, another conference of the parties after having attended like 20 conference of the parties on climate change, the problem will still be there, right?
Yeah.
It will not be solved. Because the next generation needs to take over. So it seemed to me that by being given more time and having written this book is actually a living testament, a a living lesson for future generations so that you can learn from me. And guess what? You can even ask me about it, like what you're asking me now.
Yeah. But sir, this is a mindset that is very different. The mindset that there's comfort in dying. It's very different from the early pages of the book when you were describing your youth. And you're contemplating all these heavy, big questions like, are you going to join the underground movement? Are you going to be a Jesuit priest? Or basically what you're going to do with your life, diba? It's very, like a lot
Yes,
has changed.
because it's all right to start out with life with your questions, right? And if you notice the epigram, the first epigram is from the German poet Rainier Maria Rilke.
Yeah,
And it's about, you know, I couldn't answer my questions when I was in my 20s, right? But that's not the point. The point is to live the questions because someday you will find the answers. I'm not going to say I haven't found the answers. In fact, my students, many of them have become my friends from philosophy way back 45 years ago. They still ask me the same questions. I still tell them I actually do not know the answer, but it doesn't matter because that is the answer. The answer is live the question, right? Live the question well. Live your life passionately. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. If you make mistakes, then learn from them. So that book memorializes so many of my own mistakes as a young person.
Tony, you wear so many hats in so many sectors of society, and you're very involved in a lot of groups of people. Does your background in philosophy help in this, in how you deal with all these movements and how you adjust like a chameleon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say like a
Yes.
chameleon because you can be with people who have been in the underground, you've been with progressive groups, with cause-oriented groups, and we know that these blocks, they have, while they want the best for the country, they
believe
also
in
have like
different-
conflicts.
Yeah,
have
and
different
I work
things.
with business and I work with politicians
Yeah,
and I
right.
work
And
with
with the
whole,
government,
the whole
for that
range.
matter,
I've been in climate. That's your main interest, right? I've been a government negotiator, a government official implementing things on the ground. I've been an activist demonstrating, shouting climate justice now. I've been a technocrat, right? I mean, implementing things, things on the ground. So, whole range. An academic, writing books about it. My next book is going to be about climate justice. That will be my obra maestra.
That's gonna be another episode,
Yeah, for
sir.
climate justice. Starting to write it now after this book is done. With Father Jet Villarin, we'll be co-authoring, just the two of us. Like this is the oldest scientist on climate change in the Philippines and the oldest policy person in the most senior, the oldest. So the answer is yes. Philosophy and law are the two things that gave me the power to interpret my world. And not only to interpret my world, but to change it. To quote Karl Marx, right? The point is not to interpret the world, but to change it. And philosophy gave me that power to, what we call it in philosophy, use language. Change language games as necessary. So I can change my language with progressive people. I understand the language, I can use the language. When I'm with business, I can change the language. It's not a chameleon, it's not plastic, right? It's understanding that actually in all of these language games, there's something common because you're all human beings, right? And most people just are not aware about it because they're just in their own world. But because of my experience in being in multiple worlds, right? And here, this is what's interesting about the book, because you will see that in the book. I put to advantage my mental health issues because, for example, ADHD, I am very inattentive, but that means I can multitask, right? And I can change
You
perspective.
do, sir.
I'm
If
very,
one looks at your resume, you can multitask.
I'm a very imaginative person, and I mean, I actually tell people, and I'm not saying this as a crazy person, that I can fly. I can fly at night through my imagination, right? I can even go to a friend's house at night to check on a friend. Are you happy? Are you smiling? Why are you crying?
It seems like you have this capacity,
This
big
capacity
capacity
to do that. Many people will go crazy when you have that, right? It actually is a line there I said, sometimes I feel like I'm going mad, right? But when you have philosophy and law as your anchor, then you can also ground your experience in real things that makes that skill really, really useful, right? So for climate, the climate work that really helped, because that meant I would be I would be a very good negotiator. I would be a very good negotiator, because the negotiators that are the best negotiators, sorry, modesty aside, but I would consider myself one of the best climate negotiators for the Philippines and even for the world. I do a lot of facilitating for climate negotiation when I at the peak of my powers, right? Especially physical powers. I would not sleep for 24 hours. See, it's another thing. If you're bipolar, you can be manic, and you can last for 7 to 10 days. In 2009 in Copenhagen, COP 15, I did not sleep for 10 days. I guess in 24/7 did not sleep, right? And delivered an agreement actually on forest, which I was the one chairing, right? I'm not gonna recommend that, of course, to people, right? Because but my point is, I was able to use my disadvantage of being bipolar to good use, right?
Like a weakness being your strength.
Yes. But, of course it catches up with you, right? So eventually it catches up with me sometimes I would break down mentally. Love is the one that brings you back from that. Because people love you, your friends love you, my wife very much loves me and forgives me all the time. And that's been fairly constant throughout our life.
Right. You also wrote in the book, and I quote, "You cannot just walk out, cancel, or ghost someone." You were referencing The Little Prince and sharing about this friendship that you made in Italy. And the reference from The Little Prince was about the fox telling the little prince that, I can't remember the exact quote, but you can't just leave when you've already tamed someone. You're already responsible for them. And you also reference with your words, millennial and Gen Z's relationship malpractices. What do you think is this current generation's misunderstanding or lack of understanding about love that makes it easy for them to just ghost or walk out from someone?
It's because our relationships now, right, begin shallow ways, di ba? Online, chats, right? There's nothing wrong to start it that way, but if you keep at that level, right, liking, and there's no really long conversations that allow you to tame each other. The exact line there is, once you tame person, that person is changed.
Yes.
And you cannot just leave as if you did not change the person, right? So, for Gen Zs, and even some millennials that I've worked with, what I notice is that they think that their relationships are easily to break. You can easily ghost someone because they're not deep enough to really hurt that person. It's not really deep enough to have changed that person. So I can just go because, I'm just some other person, one of many persons that you're actually engaging with. But that's not true. That's really not true. I mean, those of us, and I think millennials and selfies can also, and boomers can also have that experience of depth, right? And I'm lucky. I mean, the book has actually 3 love stories that I share. Like my first girlfriend, my Italian girlfriend, and my wife. And I tell
Yes,
the
the
story
Italian girlfriend.
and it's all about friendship, right? It's all about, it wasn't about, sex or attraction. For sure, that was there. But it was about conversation.
Yeah.
My, there's a very detailed story about how my wife and I decided to come together, right? Um, and we were just friends, and we had to make an assessment whether or not we should be more than friends, right?
Yeah.
But friendship is the basis, so that's why it's relational practice to ghost someone, because it's really saying that this relationship doesn't matter, and this person doesn't matter, and therefore I can erase that person from my life, right? And I think we make a mistake in thinking that, no, okay lang, I can move on. It doesn't hurt me. But it does hurt you.
Yeah.
It does hurt you because, the next time around, right, you will be more cynical about the person, and you might end up not having a partner for the rest of your life, right? I mean, in the end, relationships are, the term I use there is, lundagin mo, baby, right? You just have to jump, It would be good to know all the risk, right? But you can never, manage all the risks and say, oh, this is going to be safe. You have to jump. And the moment you jump, you cannot walk out, and you should not walk out anymore. It doesn't have to be like end up in marriage or end up in, can be end up in that's what I always had hoped that, well, it's, let me just say, I had my own share of having been ghosted.
Before there was a term.
Yes, even
Before the-
the
yeah.
term.
Before the term was.
Having been hurting people, causing suffering, having suffered myself. So it's not, my life is not a rose-colored life,
Right.
Life of all good things. In the end, then I say it's like, that's why the book titles are the book cover I did. That's multiple selves, right? To reflect my mental health challenges, my many hats, many life, but also refers to the Japanese word kintsugi. It's an art. Kintsugi is when you have pottery in Japan that's broken. Like it fell down, or sometimes they actually break it so that they can make a better and more perfect. Because what they do is to put the pieces together and use gold glue, lacquer, they call it, or silver. So beautiful. But it's so imperfectly beautiful, right? In other words, you can be imperfect, relationships can be imperfect, you can be imperfect, the person you love might be imperfect. But in that imperfection, if you're healed, right, in your friendship, right, there's nothing, honestly, of course, nothing better than having a relationship, like in my case of my wife, almost 45 years of marriage that have collapsed many times. Not many, several times. Maybe kung one too many, she would walk out. But several times, including the last 5 years. No? Yet it gets healed again. But next to that, there's nothing better than to have an ex as your friend.
Really?
Forever. Yeah, because it's also healing. It's also healing, right? I mean, that you have learned to forgive each other.
But it's very rare. It's rare.
But it's not impossible.
Impossible.
I mean, it's a decision that you have to make. But it's an analogy also of climate work and work to save the environment, right? It's always imperfect. There's always more things to do. But there are moments when you can actually say, wow, we did this, right? So Paris Agreement, and I was the negotiator of the Philippines. I was the spokesman of the Philippine delegation. It's a really good agreement in the context of that particular state of
You
time.
described that moment.
It's there.
in the book.
We were jumping
Where you
up and
embraced
down. We
each
were embracing
other.
each other. And not just us, everyone. All the countries of the world. Maybe exception 2 or 3, but we were embracing each other. And in that moment, you just say, wow, there's this kintsugi, right? But as long as your life is not finished, it's an unfinished life. The kintsugi is unfinished kintsugi also. So it's like, you see this coming together, but not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. It's
But
an
you see
unfinished story.
you can already see the final output, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it's there. You know it's there. And if you have faith, especially if you look at life through the lens of faith, you know what I mean? I do that. I mean, I very explicitly, my environmental and climate work is because I believe that creation, I mean, God's planet is this planet is God's creation. This home, our common home, was given to us by God, and we are stewards of this. I mean, it's a very clear mindset that I have, and so in that context, why will I lose hope when this is God's creation and He asked me to help co-create it through our actions, which is, as I said, now intergenerational. So I will just leave it to the next generation to do it better.
I think it takes a lot of discipline to really take responsible of someone. You need discipline, you need rigor, and it's also in the Little Prince, right? How the Little Prince plucks out the thorns of the rose, how he waters it every day. Would you say that it's also something that you've lived in your life? Disciplined in love, disciplined in the advocacies that you work on.
And consistency, right? And discipline, consistency, passion, but also sometimes because it's boring, I think the term that we use there is duty, right? That I do it maybe sometimes not because it makes me happy, you know, or there's, you know, a response. Sometimes it's actually just boring, but it has to be done with duty. You will see in that book that there are times when I'm just doing things that are expected of me. It's not something I'm necessarily passionate about.
But that's not a bad thing, right?
Yeah, no, that's my point. That's my point. That you have passionate moments. You have these moments where, you know, like the Paris Agreement, like the Kyoto Protocol, right? Like when you start a relationship, or when you get married, right? In my case, lately in the pandemic, you know, I mean, I just discovered so many things about myself in the pandemic. I personally, my favorite chapters are in the pandemic because I urge people to read it because it captures, you know, not just my fears, grief, sadness. I think it's everyone's uncertainty, fear, sadness during the time. But in the midst of all of that, right, you find joy in music, right? That's when I discovered Taylor Swift during the pandemic and Ben and Ben. Of course, I have my own music of my generation, Beatles, Bee Gees, James Taylor, love that, right? But during the pandemic, I was walking every day. It becomes boring to listen to the Beatles every day, James Taylor every day, and you know, it became boring. So I started, and then in Taylor Swift, what do you call this? Folklore came out.
Oh, yeah.
And Evermore, right? Within
the
6
pandemic,
months of each other. You know,
Yeah.
and this girl is actually, you know,
She's good.
deep. It's just good. And then she started releasing her Red. Oh no, Red, Fearless first, and then Red, and so I started learning the new songs, right? Until I just became a certified Swiftie.
50.
And then the same with Ben and Ben, you know what I mean? Just the music just moved me during the pandemic. So suddenly the pandemic, which is such so scary thing, so sad a thing, right, became a gift, you know, because music now fills my life, right? I mean, and hindi yan siya, it's not just me. I realized I can share it with people.
Yeah.
I can share it with people. They're fellow Swifties, they're fellow Ben and Ben, right? And we can exchange songs with each other, including with student activists that I was working with, Luma teachers. It was one Luma teacher I was sharing these songs with, and it's quite amazing that you could actually, in the pandemic, find joy in music And in film, and in here, of course, because all of us watch films, right? Netflix, everything. I discovered what? Studio Gilby films. From The Tale of Princess Kaguya, Spirited Away.
Which has a lot of
right?
environmental
Yeah, there, a
advocacy
lot.
undertones.
All the
right?
song, all the films are environmental, so it appealed to me because
Right.
of that. But they're also very deep as well. You know, I mean, clearly the films. You know, I have quite a lot of favorite. Wizard Hall. I could see, you know, myself in Wizard Hall's castle. You know, so it just appealed to me, and so the pandemic now becomes a gift, right? And what I realized, I was gonna retire before the pandemic, and I thought the pandemic would give me, suddenly this is the opportunity
down,
to
yeah.
retire,
Right.
Yeah.
to slow down. So I was just teaching, syempre, like other people in Zoom at that time. But the pandemic gave me a renewed reason for engagement, right? Being called back to the Lumad schools that were being attacked by Duterte. I became the lawyer, worked with Lumad teachers. Started to dream very big of projects I could do in Mindanao as a way of returning back to Mindanao. So suddenly the pandemic gives you life, right? And then cancer hit. So yeah, the pandemic is like suddenly what you call the buhayan ka. Here you are,
Suddenly.
ready to go to help the world become even better. But one of the things environmentally is the pandemic was caused by environmental damage,
Right.
by biodiversity damage, right? By climate change also, and there'll be more of that because of that. So that how can I retire, right? If this really bad thing that happened to the world that caused so much grief to us, sadness to us. My mother died during the pandemic. Lots of friends died during the pandemic. I wrote around 50 obituaries in the pandemic compared to 2 or 3 a year. And I actually memorialized around 10 of that in the book. I couldn't put all 50.
Yeah, there are
obviously.
actually a lot
Yeah,
of
there, and I put the most important obituary there for me. So it was really I found life again in that, and so I thought that God's plan was re-engage, strongly build this big dream project of Lumad schools based on climate justice. I founded a group called Mindanao Climate Justice Resource Facility, which would help, Mindanao address climate change. That was going to be a big project. And then cancer hit. And at first I thought, well, I'll still do the project. But that was stupid, right? If you have cancer, you should slow down. So after a while, it became clear I couldn't do that. So I decided to write my memoir. Okay, if I'm gonna die, I'll just write my memoir.
Did
But
it
then-
take a
then
long
it-
time before you accepted?
A year and a
the
half.
illness?
When you get sick, kasi it takes, you resist, you defy. I mean, even as I said, the writing of the book was defiance, right?
Right.
Yeah.
A form of defiance. I would say it was only after I've written most of the book in December of 2023, and I realized it looks like I'm gonna live longer. I have a new overtime. I consider every year now an overtime. I've given more time to love, given more time to convert, more time to be occasioned to be ransomed by love. So I'll take that and use the time. And hope that, as I said, I can be a living example for people to see that whatever you're faced with, you can make a difference. And you don't have to be like me, environmental lawyer, climate justice lawyer. It can be whatever you're being called to do. It can sometimes be even just being a friend, being a mother, being a father, being a son or a brother or a sister or a friend, right? I mean, you can be any of that. But if you do it with love, then you're actually ransoming the other with love from his or her captivity.
One part of the book is really focused on your environmental work with the DNR, with various groups, and of course with the cops, as we have been talking about. Given our situation right now, what has happened from the last COP, and what's going to happen in the next COP, do you think we've set out with what we've set out to do? Are we on track when it comes to
No, we're not on track.
Right.
And it's 8 chapters, if you want to count, on my climate work. These are my eras, di ba? Human rights,
Yeah.
environment and climate justice,
Unahan mo si Taylor Swift.
global citizen. No, before Taylor Swift was there, because I worked 10 years abroad.
Yeah.
So I worked with overseas, diba? My teachers, those were my different eras. But they all overlap. And the climate, of course, they overlap from the time I was DNR to the present, right? But you know, the nice thing about living, you know, full of years, having a life full of years, right? Is that you can interpret the context of today, not just from the past, but also looking at the future. So, Baku, 29th COP, is not the worst COP that we've ever had. That's the first thing I would say. Yeah, the worst COP we've ever had, people would generally agree on that, is COP 15 in Copenhagen. That would have been the worst COP because there was so much hope to have a really good agreement. And pieces were coming together. I did a piece on forestry on Red Plus. And then it collapsed on the last 2 days because the presidents of the world and the prime minister of the world could not agree on how to proceed, right? So everyone thought game over. Game over for climate action at the global level. The feeling was we'll just do things separately on our own, which you know doesn't solve the problem of climate.
Right.
The reason why you have conference of the parties, the reason why you have a convention, is because you need it for global action. Okay? Because it's not enough for countries to do whatever they think is right to do.
Right.
You have to coordinate all your actions so that it adds up to the impact that you want. Right? Which is below 1.5 or below 2.0. Money for adaptation, money for loss and damage is available. That's what you need to do. A just transition is possible. So in Copenhagen, we failed to do that, and we thought it was over. Parang people said, let's just not attend anymore. Let's just not have these conferences anymore, or leave the governments alone. You know. But the next year, we had the Cancun agreements, and the Cancun agreements established the Green Climate Fund. Very important decision. Established all sorts of work programs. Ratified the agreement that I already arrived at the year before on Red Plus, and set that forward, right? And then the year later in Durban in 2011, so Cancun was 2010, Copenhagen in 2011, we had Durban that said, okay, all of these things we have agreed on are really good, but we still need a new agreement. And let's do an agreement in Paris in 4 years' time. Right. So, compared to Baku, to Durban, Baku was heaven. There's another one after that that's worse than Baku. Year 2000, in The Hague. In The Hague, again, failure to arrive at an agreement, which delayed the implementation of the Kyoto Protocol. Okay, what's my point? My point is that this is a cycle that will not end. Sometimes we move forward, sometimes we move backward. What we want to make sure is that when we move backward, the next time opportunity we move 2 steps forward. so that it's just one step backward all the time. So that's why we're always moving forward. For me, Baku is not even a backward step. Baku is just staying put,
Staying put.
which is not good also.
Right.
Because the problem of climate is accelerating. The emergency accelerates. So it's not good if you say don't do anything, if you say don't move, right? Even if it's not moving backward, it's still a bad decision because you have to be able to move forward.
You said also in the book that what attracted you to the environment problem is that it poses ethical questions. As someone who has a background in philosophy, who teaches philosophy, you are attracted to the questions on humanity, humanity's responsibility for nature, exploitation of natural resources. But all these quests for justice, for the poor, for the environment, for the oppressed, how did you manage to do all these things and come at a place of love? Or is that something that it is a consistent struggle?
It is a continuous struggle, yes, because loving, loving someone, loving, whether romantically or platonically, and I use platonic there in the sense of as a person, loving the planet. As I said, for me, you know what? The most important love is actually the love I have for those I do not know. That's like counterintuitive, right? But because the people that I closest to me, my wife, for example, whom I sleep with every night, right? We can hold hands at night, and and I feel like everything is okay because I have her be by my side, and my children and my friends, the people that are close to me, people that I work with close to me. It gives me comfort that we can do things together and make a difference, right? But what really stretches my ability to love is to love the people I do not know, the masses, the poor, the excluded, the human rights victims. Eventually, I get to know them, right? Because I also respond to desaparecidos.
Yeah.
I'm lawyer for disappeared families. Many of the people that actually I've never met, but I love them deeply, right? Because that's what motivates me to do things. I mean, as I said, the planet. I've never been to Antarctica, but I love Antarctica. You know what I mean? There are places in the world. I've loved Maldives. I've never been to Maldives. I want to go to Maldives, right? But I've never been to Maldives. But I love Maldives. I've been to Mongolia. I love Mongolia. But there's a desert in Mongolia that I really want to go to. Yeah. The Sahara, I've only been at the edge of it, but I really love the Sahara. So it's this love for things that are greater than you, different from you, separate from you, that motivates me to do more. Because otherwise, I can be happy just with my wife and look at each other, and we can say, we can pat each other, we've done a good job, right? We see our children are okay, they're good people, they're good human beings. That's okay, right? But, when you think about it, right? Why were you given these talents, these skills, and this opportunity to love, this call to love, right? Because it's a gift, right? I mean, the time that I have now is a gift to just keep on loving. See, the word ransom by love there is not just a term for because you were loved, but because you love, you were ransomed.
Right.
Because you got out of yourself, diba? I'm the most selfish person in the world, I'm the most self-centered. Because that comes with the territory, philosopher, lawyer, diba? Power person, a person that wields power. That's like the most selfish person that you can think of, right? I mean, I see myself that. So it's very liberating when I'm loving another person. A Luma teacher here, a Luma student, an indigenous activist in the Cordillera, just a health worker that I work for, I work with. I mean, it's just really very liberating.
I think that's a nice irony when you say that loving liberates you because it liberates you from your self-centeredness, from yourself, but it
Yeah.
also helps you find yourself again or find your grounding.
It helps you find yourself, right? I mean, I wouldn't have known many things about myself and my own capacity if I didn't, you know, love all of these things that you are called to love. So yung ano doon, di ba, yung sana all, di ba, parang gano'n.
Yun din yung inisip namin.
Sana all.
Yung bata pa kayo, you can, I mean, you're younger than me. You have at least, I can see at least 30, 40 years younger than me. So you have this time and use this time. But I just found myself in writing this book to have been given a gift, I mean, which is that I can write for my generation, for future generations. I mean, in my generation, many of us went through the same thing: martial law, EDSA revolution, advent of climate change as a problem. Oh, social media. There's a chapter there on social media, if you read. That's where Rappler comes in.
Oh, I haven't yet.
Yeah. There's a chapter about disinformation, right? And how we really thought social media was the big thing, and then suddenly it's negative. Yeah, it's also a tool actually for disinformation. So there's actually there where I actually talk about how honored I am that Rappler asked me to be its board member. And in a time when it was under attack, right? But I always tell the story that the colleagues in Rappler in the board and the management knows that I'm the lucky charm, because since then we won every single case since I joined the board, right? But I joined at a time when it was we'll call it a wartime board, when we were constantly under attack. So I talk about that social media and disinformation, artificial intelligence. So all these challenges, and at the end I contrast with, in 1959, this was the Philippines. In 1959, this was the world. In 1959, this was my family. That's when I was born. And today, this is where I am, and this is the fights that I have to take, right? So I'm not the only one that lived through those times, right? You know, but I have the gift of being able to write, you know, the gift of discipline, to be able to write, the experience, of course, in doing that I said that shared with everyone, and the gift of cancer.
You call it a gift.
Yeah, because without my cancer, I wouldn't write this, right?
Yeah.
I would have waited another 5-10 years, and I might have died of a heart attack or a stroke. I always said that, you know, because of the intensity I lived with my life, in fighting human rights violations, in fighting climate justice, right? Especially the kids are bigger now; they don't need me. They like, go away, go away. We're friends with my kids, and you know, we make sure we gather together regularly. But they really don't want me to be involved in their lives, because they have good lives also and making a difference in their own way. So they don't want me to be involved. But I keep on doing this. But their lives, you know, if I would have died, you know, with me getting heart attack or a stroke or something like that. But the cancer kind of focused me on what else to do, right? And this book was very important to lay that down. And that's a gift, right? I mean, because I was motivated by impending death, premature anticipation of death, to write a book, which is, of course, from my community: environmental, human rights community, good governance community. But because it deals with mental health issues and physical issues it's really a book that's for everyone.
Right.
That deals with those challenges, right? And including for everyone whose family that deals with those challenges, right? I mean, and so what I found is that you have a gift, a book like this is a gift that never stops giving.
Right.
Because people read it and they remember,
Yeah.
or people read it and they like when I have a launch in Ateneo, which unfortunately you were not able to go, but we expected 150 people, but 500 people came,
Wow.
Wow.
and like 100 student activists came that I lawyer with that I mentor, right? And they were all saying, they were reading, I said the program was 6 hours because so many people, people saying, etc. But there was Taylor Swift music and
The background.
and in the background. No, live music. But walang violin and and a guitar, acoustic, beautiful music of Taylor Swift and Ben yung last part. But I noticed yung other music was not hindi interesting sa mga but when it was they started singing along, right? But the young people were telling me, so they would get to read some parts already, like the first part. Like, it really just resonated to them, the choices that you have made. Like, when do you start a relationship, right? When do you break off a relationship? How do you nurture a relationship through time? And so this book is about that also.
And this is gonna be the last question, and this is the part where you decided to marry Titay. And that decision kind of put an end to all those nagging
The
questions.
first set of questions.
Right, the first set of questions of what you're gonna do with the rest of your life. And you wrote, "But this is the right thing where we are now. I am sure of it, even if I must give up my solitude, or rather, find it in the solidarity of Titay." It's how can you expound on how you kind of married those two concepts of solidarity and solitude that you found in the face of love and marriage?
Yes. Because of my mental health issues starting as a child, I wanted to be alone all the time. I needed alone time. I would go behind our house. We had a small corridor in our house where my grandfather had an office, but was never used because we would use the front side of the house for everyone. And I would just be there after school. I'd go there and I would just talk to myself, imagine things, right? Interestingly, there was a movie house right beside us that was not aircon. So that means you could hear the sound. You're too young to remember movie houses before. You can actually hear a movie from outside. Because the movie houses were not aircon at the time. The movie houses in Cagayan de Oro where I lived. So I would do that. And I would imagine myself, Fernando Po here, Tony Ferrer, these are the old action stars. Never is Joseph Estrada, as I said.
Yeah,
or Clint Eastwood. Actually, Alain de Leon was a very beautiful, handsome man. Never John Wayne. He's too old for me, right? So I found comfort in my solitude. And I learned to pray also through my solitude because that gave me comfort and assured me that whatever happens to me, as long as God is looking at me and I'm looking at God and looking at Jesus Christ in the cross, I'll be okay. But that doesn't heal you completely. That just, it's like what? Stay put, right? It's there. And the questions still are there, right? So the solitude is good, but I found that it was not enough. And I was still asking the questions. And in that part of my life, the questions, this was a dictatorship, so do I take up arms against the dictatorship? Do I become a priest, a Jesuit priest, or not? Do I become a philosopher, a philosophy graduate teacher, mainly do a PhD in philosophy? Those were the choices. Do I go abroad because, at that point I had already my experience in Italy, my 1 year in Italy, and fell in love with someone there, right? And then there was Titay, who had become my girlfriend at some point in a very irrational way. When you're faced with a lot of questions, right, you have to figure out, and it's not gonna be theoretical. You just have to experience it. That's what I mean by leaving the question, which is the epigram for that part of the. No. I realized that the one question I need to answer was whether I would travel my journeys with this person or not.
Right.
The moment I decided, I could answer all the questions at that point, and then I could move on. I will still need solitude. So there you will see several times in that book I say, I still leave the room. And people who know me know that. Saan na siya? Even my people that are in Pukops, I would just disappear. Because I just need alone time, right? But I come back. And Titay, when you get married, see, and especially when you have children, you can still walk out, but you have to come back. You have to come back. So from then on, I would come back. Even in my worst moments of selfishness or craziness or madness, right? I would still come back. And find that there's joy in being forgiven, There's joy in that solidarity. There's in that book, in that quotation you recited at that last part, right? Finally, I got married. It's a beautiful wedding kasi 5,000 pesos, right? Because it was in Ateneo, just a garden in Ateneo, cafeteria, food. Same weekend, the Bayan, the political organization was being founded. So actually I have this wedding anniversary, 40th wedding anniversary next year, together with Bayan's founding anniversary. So lots of politics also, activists coming to our wedding, right? And it's a beautiful wedding that we had. And then right away the next day we fly to Camiguin. Like who does a honeymoon in Camiguin in 1980? Nobody does. There's no hotels there. All we did was landed there, found a hut that was for rent in the sea, and we just stayed there for days, right? Because that's where we became friends. My wife and I, Tita and I, became friends a couple of years, 4 years earlier, even before we became magjowa, as you call that today. Magkasintahan, magshota, is what we called it before, maguyab in Bisaya, di ba? That's where we were, we went back to the place where we became friends. Not even partners, just friends, where we shared our deepest secrets as friends. And so we went back there to remind us that it started as a friendship. And in that, I said there, a quote from my journal, "Oh, I'm here. And this was 4 years ago, this is where we became friends. And now we're going to walk together." And I quote a quotation from a Marxist, actually, Christian Marxist, right? If you do not born, if we do not born, how can shadows become light? That Father Jet Villarin also in his foreword uses that, because that's what I'd like our solitude mixed now to solidarity would become, that it becomes light of the world, a light to the world, not light of the, but a light to the world, right? One of many lights, because there are many things that we can hope for, that I find we can be at hope. And so that's the mission, to give light to the world. to make the shadows become light.
Thank you so much for sharing your life story and your book with us. Tony, maybe you want to invite the public where they can
Yes.
get the book?
The book will soon be in fully booked. We're hoping, which we have waited down. We'll also have it Shopee, Lazada. It's also available in the Manila Observatory, where I am. And you can actually contact me if you want the book right away, if you can, especially for Christmas, because it's still being processed. You can contact me through my Signal, Viber, or cell phone, 0998-998-4115. So,
Right.
0998-998-4115. The book, you have to pay by GCash, and then the book will be delivered to you, or you can pick up the book. It's a very good book to give out to friends. And
in this time,
in
Christmas.
Christmas.
It's a good holiday read.
Yeah, it's a good holiday.
To make people reflect of their...
There are two phases
this
here
year.
today, because make people reflect about how beautiful life can be, because this is, in the end, a happy change maker. It's about happiness. Later on in Valentine's, it will be also marketed as
Good
a
marketing.
book about love, right? So that's the next phase.
That's a good marketing.
But
idea.
we want the book to be read. It's easy reading if you I know you've read, so because it's 3 pages per chapter.
And it flows.
The flow, the transition, just like I've learned from other memoirs, because I look at other memoirs and it's like, So anyway, the other memoirs, because it's 30 pages per chapter, so you cannot even finish it in one sitting, that chapter. This one, you can finish 5 chapters in 10 minutes, right? So the 50 chapters, you can finish that in 2 or 3 days. At 1 hour intervals, doesn't have to be all at the same time. Because in 1 hour, you can finish around 5 chapters very easily, or 10 chapters even, because it's just 3 pages per chapter. It was really written with that purpose that, you read it and you like a chapter, you stop first and, what does this say to me? Right. Anyway, please buy the book. It's also for a good cause. It's actually to help me in my medical expenses, especially in the future when certain complications come. And it's for scholarships for indigenous children of Mindanao, Lumad schools, that we are, and sports programs for Lumad schools. So that's the idea. So thank you.
Okay. For other news and updates, join the Environment and Science chat room of the Rappler Communities app. The app is available on iOS and Android, or you can also visit communities.rappler.com. Thank you for listening, and until the next episode. Bye.
Bye.